Very briefly, we're going to be running down the candidates from the top of the ticket down. Each candidate will have 10 minutes to speak, talking about their office and their plans for the office. Questions will be held in reserve until all candidates are done, and then at that point we will open up to questions that you could ask of the group or individual candidates at that time. With that in mind, I wish to introduce, we have a dignitary here, Senator Melinda Bush. and other than that, let's get started. We're going to start with Tio Hardiman. Yes.
And I want to make sure we remember too, we have Terry Wilke here.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Terry.
Trustee.
Okay, I'm not very good at this. Township trustee in Haynesville. Am I missing anybody else? Okay, then with that, Tio Hardiman was going to be here, but he called and said he had the flu. So, and he was going to try to send a surrogate. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So with that, I would like to introduce current Lieutenant Governor and candidate for Comptroller of the State of Illinois, Sheila Simon.
First of all, for inviting me, Melinda, thank you very much, and biggest thank you for sending Melinda and Sam to Springfield. Yeah, exactly, that deserves These guys make a difference, and to have them coming to Springfield from here, I think, speaks volumes about the Democratic Party, where we're going, where you should expect to see us, where you didn't expect to see Democrats before, right? So I'm really, really pleased to be here with all of you. Sam made the most wonderful speech on the floor about marriage equality. I was there. It was really fun to be there and watch from the back, and just a real neat historical thing to be there. And the Democratic Party is a part of that. We're a part of marriage equality. We're a part of ending the death penalty. There are things that they're quite big deals that don't always get remembered, but wow, these are huge changes for us as a state. I have enjoyed being Lieutenant Governor very much, and it's given me an opportunity to be all over the state, along with my husband Perry. Hey Perry. We have two daughters, and in the last campaign, the younger daughter was still at home, mostly still in high school, although she got an exchange deal where she was an exchange student in Italy for a year during part of the campaign, which was really smart. She found a family who could pay attention to her that year. but she's now in college, and that means Perry and I get to be on the road together much more, and really enjoy it. Really enjoy being able to hang out with folks who are old friends, like Dean, who was a friend of both Mom and Dad for a long time. Anyway, fun to be all around the state, but really exciting, and the daughters who are 23 and 19 think this is a little bit nerdy. I get excited about the Comptroller's office. Okay, go ahead and laugh. but this is right. This is what brings us here, is a passion for being involved and making democracy work. I really think we have an obligation, and obviously all of you feel the same way, that we need to be a part of it. That we can't just sit back and say, let someone else make that decision. We need to be engaged. And I think the Comptroller's office is a place where we can really do more of that. Where the office is functioning now, but I think there's so many opportunities that are being missed. We often, when we talk about the state budget, we think that's such a big thing, that's so unmanageable, unwieldy. I'm going to let someone else make that decision. I think that makes for some bad decisions, and has made for some bad decisions. So one of the things I've been working on as Lieutenant Governor is with the governor's staff in the Department of Revenue, getting out a tax receipt. So if you file electronically this year, if it all worked out right, I'm not going for Micah, you'll get back a receipt that says, here's where we're spending your money. The same way when you get your real estate tax bill. You know how much is going to the school district, to the mosquito abatement district, or whatever else it is. we're gonna send a little pie chart that says, here's how much it goes to education, here's how much goes to public health, here's how much goes to public safety, just so that we can all be a little bit more engaged in that. And I think when more of us are engaged in that, we're gonna be making better decisions. The Comptroller's office also has an oversight role on local governments. Every local government turns in an audited report to the Comptroller's office, right? And the information kind of sits there. I'd like to use that information. I was on the city council in Carbondale, Illinois, certainly not the biggest city in the state, but we enjoyed it and very proud of what we did there. And when we would say, you know, what do we want to do on this road program? How much are we taxing? Are we taxing as much as the neighboring communities? You know, I'd call over to my friends in Marion and say, hey, what do you guys do? I'd like the Comptroller's office, who has all of that information, to say, here's the norm. Here's sort of the benchmark. Send it back to those library boards, townships, and say, here's how you're doing compared to other groups of the same size, so that we know what's going on. You think how this information might have helped a community like Dixon, where their treasurer stole $53 million? Right, exactly. So that's one example. There's another example even further south, closer to where I live, Morrow Township, small rural township. Their township supervisor is being prosecuted for stealing $750,000 from the township. It's a lot of money. It's even more money when you consider that their annual budget is $400,000. Right. So I know. So obviously there's one corrupt guy there in Morrow Township. I'm guessing though that there are members, there are trustees there who would like to know what's going on, who are dedicated to doing the job well, and if they had the right information, could say, "Wow, how is it that none of our roads are paved?" Right. So I'm interested in making sure that we use that information well to make democracy work better. And then finally, I'm also interested in doing it in a transparent and open way. And this is something that I come by very honestly. Mom and Dad, who many of you I think knew, both certainly worked for Dad out in Washington, right? You know, Dad disclosed his income way before that was the cool thing to do. He used to disclose my babysitting income. Right? So this is a pretty comfortable thing. Thank goodness Perry's comfortable with it too. So every year we disclose our income taxes. We publish a detailed financial report that says what kind of assets we have, what kind of liabilities we have. So you can look for yourself and see if I've got a conflict of interest. I think that's not too much to ask for someone who hopes to hold statewide office, right? Yeah, exactly. And I ask my senior staff to publish their information about their income and assets as well. They've been very cooperative about it too. So I'm passionate about it because I'm just passionate about democracy. I am also, by the way, an underdog. I'm the only statewide person running against an incumbent Republican, and she's tough. But I am convinced I can do the job better, and with your help, I think we can get there. I hope I haven't taken more than 10 minutes of everyone else's time. Thank you very much.
Next up will be Dean Mergus for Secretary of State Jesse White.
Thank you very much. Let me just first say thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to address you today on behalf of Jesse. As Sheila alluded, I've known Jesse White and Paul Simon and Sheila's family for many years. Not myself, but my father was a former state senator and a state rep who served down in Springfield for many, many years. And our family takes public service very, very seriously, now more than ever. As far as the overview of where my perspective is, I have the honor and privilege of being the New Trier Democratic Committeeman, which is New Trier is comprised of Winnetka, Wilmette, Kenilworth, and Glencoe. And I can say with much pride that when I took office a couple years ago, we had some Republicans, and now for the first time in their history, we're all Democrat, both on the congressional level and on the local level. And we're going to continue that to make sure that we get Sheila and all the Democrats elected, not necessarily because of the fact it's the right thing to do, but because it's necessary, because we're seeing what's happening in New Trier is more and more independents, more and more Republican women and men are joining the Democratic ranks because they're seeing what the alternative is. We have seen Mr. Rauner, who can't make a decision whether he's sitting, standing, kneeling, or crying. But he'll make a decision sooner or later. What's sad about that statement is the fact that the man's running for the highest office in the state of Illinois. And let me talk about Jesse White and why I feel so strongly that we have a very strong ticket with Jesse White on it. Jesse White has literally saved lives. He has saved lives. Just let me run three reasons. Number one, he has been heading up the Jesse White Tumblers for over 50 years. I have met doctors, lawyers, nurses, all professions, men, women, of all races and colors and creed that he has helped in their lives. So he saved lives those ways. Second of all, he has, since he's taken office, cracked down on important aspects of driving. He has made sure that the situation with children in high school, my daughter is in sophomore, they have to put in 50 hours of driving time before they get their license. That has decreased the amount of deaths, teen deaths, by almost 90% in the last couple of years. And the third reason why I believe that he is saving lives is it's very little known, but recently Jesse has now, for the first time in Illinois history, gotten the organ donor program attached to a national network. What that does is it allows more organs to be given to needy individuals in the state, and individuals from out of state who move into state don't have a problem in getting their organs donated if they were high on a list in another state. So those are three ways that Jesse has helped us in saving lives. Let's talk about the other aspects of who he is and what he's done. Let's not forget that his predecessor is in jail, or was in jail. The Secretary of State's office, previous to Jesse White, had individuals who were not honest and had no integrity. Jesse has cleaned that up. He hired Jim Byrne, one of the top prosecutors, federal prosecutors, as soon as he got into office, and he cleaned up that office, and no longer was it to keep your job, you had to buy a ticket to a fundraiser or be obligated to sell that. I feel as though he also has such a strong reputation, not just citywide, but nationwide. I've had the honor and privilege of going to Democratic conventions when I've been with him. He knows people nationally. And what that does, same with Sheila, she knows people nationally because of what her family has done and what she has accomplished. What that means for us is that we need to make sure that every Democrat from Quinn to Vallis, all the way down the ticket, even to the local tickets, wins this year because of the fact that the alternative is untenable. We have a governor's race right now, which I believe is going to be a very hotly contested race. I strongly believe, I grew up with Paul Vallis. I think Paul has been an outstanding candidate as lieutenant governor because of his knowledge of Springfield and his knowledge of Chicago, and as importantly, as Sheila said, his knowledge of state and city and governmental finance. Pat Quinn is an outstanding governor. He and Paul are going to run very strong ticket, and as I said, I was talking to Sheila, Mike Frericks, Sheila's going to bring up the South. I think we can win this all the way down. I feel very strongly and very honored to be a Democrat. I believe our party is the Progressive Party. Jesse White is an outstanding legislator. We're very proud of him running. We're honored that he's running still, and I've got to tell you that as far as my small township, we're going to keep it blue. I can't take credit for that alone. We've got a strong candidates that we're running, and we also have that statewide. And also my organization is a very, very strong, intelligent organization, as is yours. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I've known Jesse, as I said, for over 40 years. I can answer almost any question that can be posed to me, and if I can't, I'll make sure that you get the answer. Thank you for having me here.
Next is State Representative Sam Yingling, running for re-election.
Thank you all so much for having us today, and thank you, Chris and Paul Law and Hal Sloan for setting all this up. This is wonderful. I don't think we've done this before in Avon Township Democratic Organization. I don't think we've had a candidate forum before, so thank you very much. The 62nd District, as many of you are aware, encompasses all 4 of the Round Lakes, Grays Lake, Wildwood, Gages Lake, a little part of Gurnee, and then also a little part of Wakanda. 108,000 people within the district. I was elected about a year ago and have spent the past year in the legislature, and we've dealt with some very, very meaty issues. This past year has not been an easy year for the state of Illinois. And really what has happened, what we've seen transpire over the past year, is essentially cleaning up the mistakes of all the other years prior to that. So we had a very meaty legislative agenda this year, dealing with obviously budgetary issues, pensions, a lot of hot button social issues, marriage equality, medical cannabis, concealed carry, fracking, and all of these issues really took a lot of the attention of the General Assembly. And you always hear that the General Assembly doesn't do anything. But let me tell you, from being there just in this past year, the General Assembly did an awful lot. And they accomplished a lot to help clean up the fiscal stability of the state, get it back on track, and move a lot of social issues forward. One of the most underrated stories of the year was that the state of Illinois had a $1 billion windfall this year. And that came as a result of the change of capital gains taxes at the federal level. So you had a lot of people at the state level liquidate their assets to take advantage of the lower rates, and therefore the state ended up with about $1 billion in additional revenue. I'm a member of the freshman caucus in the House. There's a number of freshmen in the House, and we have an informal group that meets. But one of the things that we wanted to do with that $1 billion when the House was appropriating those funds was to use them to pay down the Medicaid bills. And if we did that, the federal government would match dollar for dollar. So consequently, the state of Illinois was to take their $9 billion unpaid bills and bring it down to about $7 billion. So that was another area of great accomplishment for this past year, which I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with. We still have about $7 billion in unpaid bills, and that's a lot of money, but we're getting there. And I think we're starting to move on the right track to head towards better fiscal stability. I sit on the State Government Administration Committee. I sit on the General Services Appropriations Committee. I sit on the Tollway Committee, and I also sit on the Economic Development Committee. One of the areas of great interest that I'm looking at, working on legislation going into the next session, is going to be economic development for our community. Especially when you look at the unemployment rates, especially within the Round Lake area, how they're trending higher than the county and from the state level. And the need to start bringing in jobs for unskilled labor, trained labor, whatever the case might be. And I think that we can do that through a revision of our EDGE grants that we provide. Right now, the State Government Administrations Committee is looking at the EDGE grants, which is what you often hear about that the state uses for economic development purposes. It's also a grant that's been abused a lot by, I think the best case is Google Motorola in Libertyville, when they got millions of dollars in grants and then laid a bunch of people off. So I think that we can use that grant by reforming it and making it much more applicable to small and medium-sized businesses. And I think that that is something that we can really utilize here in the 62nd District with bringing in more commercial and industrial industry to help put some of our people here back to work. The other thing that we need to start looking at too is infrastructure. And there's a lot of outdated infrastructure within our communities here that will cost millions and millions and millions of dollars that we just don't have at a local level. So by utilizing some additional capital bonds at the state level, we would be able to bring in more infrastructure money to help repair some of our sewer and water lines. I have committees that I meet with. I have local citizen advisory committees that I meet with regularly. And out of those committees come a lot of great ideas as they pertain to healthcare, veteran affairs, economic development, a variety of other things. So I encourage you, I don't think any of you, I've seen any of you at my committees, but I encourage you to attend those committees, and that's something that I plan to continue to do. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Janet Kilkelly, candidate for Lake County Clerk.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the Avon Township Democrats doing this today because actually you're my unveiling. This is my first official, time to present myself because most of the people do not know me. We haven't had a change in the clerk's office in 20 years, so It's long overdue, and I intend to tell you a little bit about myself today, just so you know who I am and what I can bring to the office. First and foremost, I'm a Waukeganite. I was born and raised in Waukegan, went to Waukegan schools, Catholic. I come from a family of 5 girls, and so that was always a challenge for my dad. I am a twin, a fraternal twin, and if you notice, twins sometimes might have a speech inflection, and mine happens to be on R's. So everybody thinks I'm not from Waukegan, but I really am from Waukegan, so believe me. I have an associate's degree from the College of Lake County, and a bachelor's from Lake Forest College. It took me 8 years to get my degree, and in that time period, I worked at full-time at different industries. I worked at Abbott Laboratories, and I worked at Cherry Electric. I did, let me see. Oh, at Abbott Laboratories, I received an award from Abbott because I streamlined one of their functions for customer service. So I do have a great aptitude to try to streamline, processes and procedures, and I think that's really important for the clerk's office. I was the assistant registrar for the master's program at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. I also managed the bookstore at Barrett College, which I'm going to bring up is Sheila Simon's mother's alma mater, Miss Jeannie. She went to school there. And all those experiences allow me to become proficient in business processes and procedures. I currently work at Libertyville Main Street, and I know the importance of working for nonprofits because I've done a lot of fundraising for nonprofits, and I really enjoy that. My familiarity with government comes from my unpaid work as 3 times elected commissioner for the Waukegan Park District. In fact, I am the current president of the Waukegan Park District, and I am honored to say that this year we received the gold medal for excellence in services and programs on a national level from the National Parks and Recreation Association. So that's a big feather in the cap for Waukegan's Park District, and it also means that this doesn't happen overnight. We had a strategic plan in place to accomplish that, and it was done with, from the president of the Park District down to the people who mow the grass. So that was a strategic plan that we had in place. Especially when you take a look at how you have limited budgets these days, in order to accomplish that, we worked very hard. I was elected trustee for the Waukegan Township. In addition, I had an appointment by the governor of the state of Illinois to the Waukegan Court District that I served for 5 years. So I've had the good fortune to serve with these entities that have and continue to deliver quality goods or quality services to the community. I have a customer service background, so I plan to lend a professional atmosphere to the county clerk's office in dealing with vital records. That's one of their main focuses, is having vital records, birth, death, marriage certificates. And managing these records are important because they preserve your safety in this age of stealing identities. So, a lot of people seem not to be excited about the clerk's office, but I'm excited about it. The other duties of the clerk's office is tax extension information, as well as secretary to the Lake County Board. The key duty of the clerk's office is the administration of voting in Lake County. The right to vote is the fabric of our democracy, and I intend to protect that right. I want to make sure everyone qualified to vote has the opportunity and to protect fair elections. So I have a great deal of detail and organization background to my background, and I think that the clerk's office needs to deliver services efficiently so that taxpayers' dollars are stretched as far as they can go these days. So that's just a little bit about me at this point. I really appreciate being here for the Democrats, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.
John, I'll apologize in advance for mispronouncing your last name. John Krempotic? Krempotic. For a candidate for Lake County Sheriff.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate being invited here today. Democrat, this sure is foreign territory. When I first started in law enforcement in 1979, there weren't too many Democrats. It was the Hunt Club role, and we are growing constantly. It's a changing county. I think we need to capitalize on that and get Democrats in office, people who are fair, people who understand the needs of the community and are not subservient to the Republican Party. One of my goals, and I've gone over this several times so I don't need any paper, is to modernize the Sheriff's Department and bring it into the 21st century. Right now, they have a patrol pattern that was set up over 50 years ago when Kennedy was president. God rest his soul. And that hasn't changed. The county has grown from about 200,000 people in the 70s to almost 800,000 people now. We are 1.5 times the size of Milwaukee. And we have 10 patrol cars out there patrolling. So one of the things I want to do, and this work for the city of Waukegan, is work with the union and develop a new shift pattern, which would be 12-hour shifts. May sound bad, the way the formula works, they work the first 3 days on 12 hours, the last day maybe an 8.5-hour shift. What this allows us to do, and then they get 4 days off, so that's why a lot of people like it. But what this allows us to do is to maintain a high presence on the highway patrol. We could double the manpower that's out there right now and really concentrate on areas where they're getting hit with burglaries, such as the Lake Villa area and out here. One of the other things I want to do with this additional manpower, we have an academy that they're developing on Russell Road. And the reason I called it an academy is it's a training facility for police and fire, but it doesn't meet the needs of the basic training for law enforcement. That can simply, that can be done very simple. I want to institute a facility up there where we can train law enforcement. They're required to have 400 to 480 hours law enforcement training certification. By establishing the academy up here, we can also offer it to local police agencies at a very lower cost than what they're paying now. You can save on travel all the way to Springfield, which is where they're training our officers now, or Champaign. I think by doing this, we can increase employment up here by using instructors who are qualified to teach these different programs, which would include accident investigation, patrol procedures, investigative procedures. I myself am a certified instructor in field sobriety testing. And we put on that class a few times with the county. Myself and the now retired Lieutenant John Jansen. What the sheriff has done though now, he removed all the certified personnel from within the courthouse. And he promised to replace them with retired law enforcement. That's not the case, as you may have read in the paper. He's hired some people who have no experience in law enforcement. It resulted in, came close to jury tampering in that recent murder trial down there. We can't have that. We have thousands of people going through that courthouse every day. And we need the professionals in there to protect these people. The county court is in there, the state's attorney's office, the judges, law enforcement, and the general population that goes in there for various forms of business, not just going to court. But we need to have an established law enforcement personnel in there. And then in the jail, our corrections division, they're using correction officers to serve orders of protection. They've removed the certified deputies out of the warrants division. They're using correction officers to serve warrants at a lower rate of pay. This, I'm told, violates state law, and I'm still researching that. It's the service of certain papers such as orders of protection and so forth. The law mandates that they be certified personnel that are serving these things. But within the corrections division, we have very minimal training programs. They train them in computers, but that's about it. What I foresee doing is I want to take some of the inmates that want to learn and want to do something with themselves and have training programs in automotive repair, carpentry, construction, whatever the case may be. Teach these individuals how to do this. Teach them how to take care of themselves, how to live for themselves, so they don't have to resort back to crime. Many of them get back out on the street and they're in the same boat. Many of them are drug addicts. We need to invest the resources there to treat these people and make sure that when they leave that facility, their behavior has corrected, as a correctional facility is supposed to do. I want to crack down on the gangs, and that's easy to say, but you can't just take a kid and say, you know, this is bad, you can't do it, we're gonna lock you up. You really have to give them an alternative also. And again, in that I want to invest in training with the College of Lake County, with the shop program they have there for the high school students. I want to get these kids into something different than gangs. Because again, if you arrest them, they come out, they're still in the gang. We've got to give them opportunities. We've got to give them options other than just the thug life, as they call it on the street. You can go within 2 blocks of the courthouse down there and find gang activity. You can go within 2 blocks of this facility right here and find gang activity. It's everywhere. It's in Barrington. It's in Lake Forest. It's in North Chicago, where I'm from. It's everywhere. And nobody's taken a serious look at it. What I'd like to do is incorporate with the other local municipalities and create a meaningful gang task force that will address the problem. Not just getting the kids off the street again, as I said, but give them the options. Train these kids, give them reasons to leave gangs and to have a brighter future than what they're looking at right now. Because again, many of them are back out on the street, they've got no parental supervision. In the Hispanic communities, the gangs are very prevalent. And the reason that is because the parents are afraid to contact the police. Some of them are here illegally. I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned that their safety is protected as well. Okay, you'll hear from, especially the far right, where they don't care. They say they don't have any rights. They do have rights. They're in this country, they have rights. And we need to protect them too, and I want to work with the Hispanic community. Get these gang kids out of their community and protect them. As I said, that's the reason the gangs flourish so well in some of these communities, because they're afraid to contact the police. Because they're afraid if they do, they're going to get thrown out of the country. We've got to get past that. These people are productive citizens as well. Maybe not citizens of our country yet, but they're out there working. They're paying taxes. They buy food. They buy gas. They deserve our protection. But that's pretty much where I'm going with this. So I want to thank you very much again for having me out here. It's a very good turnout considering the weather. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, speaking for Jason Pat, candidate for Lake County Sheriff, is Andy Wilke.
Thanks for having me. I know a lot of friendly faces in the room, so it's good to see all of you again. Jason couldn't be here. He's an investigator with the coroner's office and is on duty this morning. So he apologizes for sending me. But that being said, you know, Jason is a very, very qualified candidate for this office. He's a 8-year veteran of the United States Navy. The last 4 years he was stationed here at Great Lakes in the county. The first 3 years of that he was a military patrolman, which at Great Lakes doesn't only service the base, but also the close surrounding community as well. So he has law enforcement background in that. The last year of his service, he did a tour in Iraq. So I think we can all see that he has a wide range of experience on the law enforcement and military side of things, locally and with his tour in Iraq. But when he came back, he got an honorable discharge and was hired at the sheriff's office, and shortly after that moved over to the coroner's office, where he is now as an investigator. His main platform is that he wants to get politics out of this office. We are Democrats here, and he is a Democrat, but the sheriff's office shouldn't be somewhere where your politics are a factor in you moving up in your job, being fired from your job, or your treatment on the job if you are still allowed to be in the office. The current office is being run with politics in mind, with theatrics in mind, and that's not really what this office is here for. It's here to protect citizens. As John had mentioned, this is an office where the politics shouldn't be part of it, plain and simple. A little bit more about what Jason wants to do once elected is there's a couple things we've heard about lately, locally and nationally. One of the things, school safety. We hear time and time again, unfortunately, that the schools and school shootings and incidents that could possibly be avoided. Whether they're here in Illinois or in other states, the school safety plan that most of the schools go by is outdated and needs to be revamped, relooked at, and brought to the current standards that we should have. The other thing you might have been hearing about lately is deaths of inmates and the lawsuits that followed suit. There's a lot of money going through many of these offices: the clerk's office, the sheriff's office, the coroner's office. It's all taxpayer money. We need to do what we can to protect that money. We need to do what we can to stretch it. As you mentioned earlier, in one way that's not being done is being used as settlements for many of these lawsuits. The current sheriff's office has multiple pending lawsuits against them for not only inmate treatment, but also their employees being fired for reasons that, like I said, are whether political or for other things that aren't on the job related incidents. So cleaning those things up, bringing a more straightforward and fair practice to the office is a very important thing to Jason, and he also wants to do a little bit of reorganizing as well. This goes back to the money and the budget that the sheriff's office has. There's a lot of positions that overlap that can be eliminated. Not necessarily. Some of that money can be saved. Some of that money can also be used to hire more officers, get more people on the streets, get more qualified people in our corrections facilities, so that we can avoid some of the crime, avoid some of the incidents that have happened around, and just make the county safer. I mean, that's obviously the goal here, is use the funds that we have and the resources that we have and make the county safer. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. We could talk about many of those for a while, but we can go over that in questions. So Jason, again, apologize that he can't be here, but we really appreciate your support in the primary and then hopefully in the general.
Thank you. Next up is John Wylie, candidate for Lake County Board, District 6.
Thanks, Al. Most of you don't know me, although I've met some of you over the years. Just to give you a little background, I've lived in Grays Lake. This is my 11th year. I have a wife, Patsy Welch, and a daughter, Ellis, who is 21, graduated in 2010 from Grays Lake Central High School. I've practiced law in Illinois for coming up on 30 years, primarily representing small businesses and individuals in litigation and appeals. So the question is, why am I running for the county board? Well, Pat Carey has represented us for many years. Pat's been a very strong advocate for the district and the county as a whole, and has done some great things, but she has decided to retire. And I think that we're going to have a leadership vacuum here, and I think that my background as a lawyer and my civic involvement has given me the resources and the experience to hopefully fill that vacuum. So what are my positions? If I'm elected to the county board, I'll be a strong advocate to ensure, for measures to ensure a sustainable environment, to promote smart transportation planning so that we can alleviate some of the congestion that we have here and lead to further economic development, promoting responsible economic development, including promotion of a sustainable local food system. I also will be an advocate to ensure that the board continues to be mindful of its fiscal responsibilities. We all pay a lot of taxes, and we need to keep that in mind whatever we do on the board. So specifically, with regard to a sustainable environment, one of the things that I'm interested in is working to shut down the coal plant in Waukegan. That is one of the greatest sources of greenhouse gases. Coal plants generally are. I've seen estimates that the cost of having that coal plant to the county is about $86 million annually in environmental and health issues. Most people don't realize it, but in the American Lung Association report card for the last period, we got an F. One of the reasons is, I think, primarily because of this coal plant. So we need to work to get rid of that. But we need to do it in a responsible way also. There are a lot of people who work there. So we need to be able to take care of them and figure out how to shift those people into other jobs. There's also tax revenues that Waukegan gets and the county gets and so on, and we need to be able to replace those. So we need to do this in a responsible way, and what I would suggest is that we form a commission of all interested parties, people from the plant, people from the workers groups, people from the communities and the county as a whole, to figure out how we can phase this thing out and replace the jobs and replace the tax revenues. Another factor, this year Terry and Pat were able to put a new position in the county government, the sustainability director. This is going to be a crucial year, this year, next year, and the year after, I think, for that position. There was some opposition on the board to that, especially in committee, and it passed barely before passing in the budget as a whole. So we need to provide the resources and the resources in order to allow that person, whoever it is that's hired, to succeed in that position, so that we have some kind of a report card in coming years that we can point to and say, look, this is a successful position. It pays for itself, both environmentally and economically, and I think we can do that. I'd also suggest that maybe we put together an advisory board of interested parties from environmental groups and business and local communities in the county to advise the county on sustainability issues. So those are the things that I'm looking for in terms of sustainability, environmental sustainability. As I mentioned, I'm also in favor of a sustainable local food system. We've got a unique position here. We're between two of the major metropolitan areas in the country, and we've got some of the greatest farmland in the country, and we have that resource. And we ought to be using those assets to build a sustainable local food system. People are clamoring for that. You see the proliferation of farmers markets around the county, around the country. Grays Lake is even running a farmers market today in the middle of the winter. So, which I urge you to go to after we're done here. This is not just an environmental issue. It's not just a food issue. It's an economic issue. That can be one of the drivers of economic development in the county. I've seen some reports which suggest that if we the potential economic activity increase in the county could be over $1 billion a year because of the multiplier effects and so forth. And as I said, people are clamoring for this. Restaurants drive up to Lake County to buy local food so that they can put on their menus. This is where your food comes from. That's a resource. That's something we can develop. And as I said, it's not just an environmental issue or health issue, it's an economic issue. I also support expansion of the pilot program. I guess it was a pilot program that the Forest Preserve started last summer in Waukegan, where they took a small plot of land, turned it over to community as a community garden. It created jobs. It created interest in the neighborhood. It provided food for localities. We've got a lot of land around the county. I think we can take small plots, put them in around lake areas, put them in Grays Lake, put them in Barrington and other places, so that people see what the county and what the Forest Preserve can do in terms of local foods. I think that would be very helpful, and would also help alleviate some of the food insecurity that 10% or more of the people in this county face. So those are some of the things we can do in terms of the local food system. Economic development, I support job creation efforts. I think we need to work with Sam and other state officials, so that Melinda as well, sorry, I don't want to forget you. So that we can bring more jobs here, we can develop the businesses that we have, and keep the companies here that provide jobs. I think we have other resources we can work with. We have not-for-profits here. The hospital system would be a good source to work with, College Lake County and so forth. So I think we, as a county, can all work together to develop those. One of the things that we need in terms of economic development is a smart and efficient transportation plan. Driving up 120, I'm always reminded painfully of the congestion there, and so we need to work on that. Route 53 is something that's been on everybody's mind for the last 50 or 60 years also. We finally had the commission come up with their plan. There's still a lot of open issues there. Primarily, how are we going to pay for it? It's over $2 billion shortfall there, and I think that, while I applaud the work that the people did on the commission, that program, or that development is, I think, years from now. In the meantime, we need to do a lot of other things, and we can do a lot of other things. One of the things is promoting a alternative means of transportation, bike lanes and bike paths. We can encourage businesses to create incentives for their employees to use those sorts of things. For those who need to drive, we can explore carpooling and incentives for carpooling, and expand the PACE program for the PACE ride-sharing program, where you can call up and get put into a carpool. So those are lots of different things that we can use to keep cars off the road and to alleviate some of this congestion. We also need to look into expanding bus transportation. In Chicago on Ashland Avenue, there was a program, thank you. I have to wrap up quickly, I didn't realize I was going to go this long. On Ashland Avenue, there's a bus rapid transit thing, where they have a dedicated lane for buses which can move along sort of like a streetcar or subway car. We could explore that sort of thing here in the county as well. We also need to work on educating the workforce. We need to promote programs for adult literacy and education, including GED programs. I guess that's about it. I have a few more points, but I don't have any more time, so. Okay. You can look on my website, it's WylieForLakeCountyBoard.com. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm hoping to get out into the district to meet everybody and to talk to everybody and explain what I'm all about and what I can do, and find out what people want done. So, as I mentioned, I was a lawyer. I deal with complex constitutional, statutory issues every single day. There are complex issues facing the county. I think that I have preparation to work on those and be successful as a county board member, and I'm asking for your support in the primary. I don't have an opponent, but I'd sure like you to get out and vote, and in the general election in November as well. And finally, many of you know that the Round Lake High School referendum is on the ballot also on March 18th. This is a really critical issue. The high school is overcrowded. It needs to expand. This referendum, if passed, will allow for those measures. And I'd like to introduce Georgianne Duberstein, who is one of the people in charge of that, and she can talk a little bit more detail about it. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all the candidates for coming today, for expressing, giving us a background. And like John said, everybody go out and vote in March. It's important. This is a candidate forum, but on a personal level, education is better education throughout the country, throughout the community, throughout Avon Township is a cure to a lot of the ills in this country. And it's very close to my heart. I want to introduce Georgianne Duberstein, who is spearheading the referendum to expand the District 116 Round Lake High School. Georgianne.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. How many people live in District 116? Well, I'm speaking not only to you, but to all of the rest of you, because it's important to get the word out to all the people that you know that live in District 116. The referendum is for an addition to the high school. The need is, there are 750 students over capacity today. And the school district has done several things to try and cope with that. They have mobile classrooms, outdated ones, needless to say, but they're there. Dual bell systems, so that they can try and fit everybody in somehow during the day. The gym situation is that some students, their gym period is walking around the courtyard. So obviously that's not what was expected when you think about what your gym class is going to be. So there are several things that require this need. Now, what's going to happen, hopefully, if this gets passed, is there'll be 24 new classrooms. There'll be 4 additional labs for science, technology, engineering, and math, which is the new way of doing old science labs. There will be an additional gym so that actually students can have an active gym period. There'll be a new class for special needs students, because now they have to farm them all out to other places, and this way they'd be able to have some of their students attend the high school. And there'll be a digital arts class as well. So those are the things that are planned. And with that, it should make a big difference to the atmosphere in the school. They're working very hard to work on the academic improvement of the district, and if we can give them a better environment, that will go hand in hand to make the school, the achievement and the attitude towards school better. Now, what is this going to cost? $29 million. Sounds like a lot of money. When you hear the word referendum, most people go, oh, taxes. It's been structured in such a way that the existing bonds will be restructured and new bonds will be issued at a lower interest rate. So the plan is, and the guarantee is, that the referendum will not increase the tax rate. The tax rate will remain at the present level, stable for the length of the bonds. Now that'll increase the length of the bonds 3 years, only 3 years more than if we didn't do anything. So it's really critical that you realize that this is a need, it can be filled, and it will keep your tax rate at the same level as far as the referendum is concerned. There are other things that could affect your tax rate, but it will not be the referendum. That's guaranteed, that the referendum will hold the tax rate as it is. Now, we have literature here that I'd love to encourage you to get. We have a website, citizensfordistrict116.com. All of our literature is out there. If you would get it and email it out to all your friends. We have a Facebook, Citizens for District 116. We're counting on social media to help in this new day and age to get the word out. If any of you are interested in helping on the committees, the more people we have, the less each one has to do. If you go to the website and do info@citizensfor116.com, it'll come to me and I can find you a little job to do. So I appreciate your interest, your willingness to hear, and I'm just hoping for your support in the election on March 18th, and to get the word out to all of your friends and family that are in the district to get them out to vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think everyone can see the benefit of what a win-win situation that is for the voters, for the community, for the students, for the teachers. There's no increase in the tax rate, and better, more modern facilities. So, as head of the Avon Township Democrats, we're going to do what we can to help get that referendum passed.
Thank you.
Now we'd like to open up the forum to questions. Questions can be directed to a specific candidate, or we can give a question for the entire group and just go down the line, keeping those answers relatively short. So, do we have anybody who has any questions? We'll open that up. We'll start back there. State your name, please, and...
My name is Jim Walls. I'm actually a Warren Township precinct committeeman. I hope you don't mind that I'm here.
Love having you.
But I want to thank everybody for running for the office that you're aspiring for, and I wish you luck at Ron Lake. If you need any help, I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Sam, you had mentioned fracking, one of the things that the state is working on. I think the EPA recently came out with a finding against silica mining. What is happening in the state of Illinois, and is the state of Illinois protecting itself? Silica mining is widespread up in western Wisconsin and is proposed to be expanding south and in the central part of the state. With silica sand, it goes flying through the air, gets into the water tributaries. Is the state of Illinois doing anything to protect itself against the adverse effects from silica mining in the state of Wisconsin?
Sure. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the fracking bill and how it came to be, let me just take you through those steps really quickly. Fracking is short for hydraulic fracturing. I'm sure many of you are familiar. It's a way of extracting generally natural gas, oil products out of the earth by fracturing bedrock. Illinois had no, their mining laws essentially dated back to the 1940s and had no regulation on fracking. So somebody could just start fracking in southern Illinois. They didn't have to tell the state about it. I think they had to pay about a $100 application fee, and then they could go to town. So there was no accountability. I was actually a sponsor of the moratorium on fracking until we got more information. But there was another bill that was competing with the moratorium, and that was the regulatory bill. The regulatory bill puts in place the strictest regulations of any state in terms of fracking. Before it came up, I had a meeting with the executive director of the Illinois Environmental Council, and she had come up to me, she had asked to meet with me off the House floor, and she showed me a sheet of paper that they had accidentally, her organization had accidentally come across. And what it was an application for fracking. And it was just by coincidence or by luck that the mining company had used the side area to make some notes about how much fresh water they were using that triggered that, okay, these people are fracking. So it was at that point then that I agreed to support the regulatory bill because fracking was already taking place in Illinois and had no regulations. As far as your question goes about how are we protecting ourselves against Wisconsin, that I'm not sure. I am more than happy to look into that. Pretty much what, the majority of the fracking in Illinois that can or will take place is going to be in the southern part. The northern part isn't really geologically equipped for that. But if you, I'm more than happy to check in and see what we're doing to protect ourselves from any sort of contamination from Wisconsin.
Let me toss in a quick answer too. I chair 3 river advisory councils, and as a part of those, we have a scientific advisory committee that we've asked to do a report on silica sand mining and how it affects water quality in Illinois. We're meeting in February, and that report will be made public then, so if you wanna, before we take off, let's swap emails and we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you.
Other questions? Don?
Yeah, my question for Sheila.
Huh?
You mentioned something about the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they're trying to abolish death penalties, or?
Yeah, in fact, it has been abolished.
Okay.
Yep, the governor signed that in one of the first acts after we were all sworn in 2011, so, yeah.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, bringing this up until this week, I was all for the death penalty. When I seen what they did to that man in Ohio, where he was gasping for breath, there was some new formula in there to put him to death. That completely turned my attitude. I've never seen anything so cruel and so inhumane as that in my entire life. And you know, a lot of people will say, well, you know, the person did this to this, you know, they just got what they come. Nobody should have that happen to them.
Yeah.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay, thank you.
I could add to that as on the death penalty. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. One of the studies we did was on the death penalty, on punishment in general. In order for punishment to have any effect on the populace, it has to be swift, it has to be severe. Yeah, the death penalty is definitely severe, but swift is not. By the time people are executed in these states, the crime has been committed at least over 10 years ago, sometimes over 20 years ago. The people don't realize what this person did, and it has very little effect on them. But what you brought up is correct. What they did was basically overdose the guy on OxyContin.
Right.
And yeah, it slows the breathing down, but it doesn't stop the heart. And that's, you know, that was terrible. I agree with you 100% there. 25 minutes of torture.
Andy, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I have a question for Sam. So, I appreciate hearing all the different, things, and I didn't actually realize the death penalty law was passed, so that's really important to me. But I guess what's most important to me is the government pension issue, and specifically, I'm a teacher in District 46, how that affects, my future, my colleagues' future. So, I guess I have a couple questions. One is, the money that was misplaced some years ago, where did it go? And clearly it didn't go to the pension program. So I just find it so frustrating that I want to know why people can justify this, I guess, that then the pensioners, or whatever the right word is, are responsible to fix it. We didn't, and I get we would have to play our role in getting this budget under play, but that it's on our backs is disappointing, and I'm wondering why you guys feel that's okay.
No, that's a great question, and you are completely, those are very legitimate feelings to have, and it's incredibly frustrating. The whole situation is inherently unfair, and I don't blame you for having those feelings. I don't blame anybody who is affected by the bill for having those feelings, because you're dead on with that. To address the first part of your question about where did that money go, the pension system has been underfunded by the state for decades, and I can't specifically tell you where the money went or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure we could find out by just pulling the budgets for those past couple decades, and that was wrong. They should have been fully funded. One of the things that are you familiar with the RAM? Under Edgar, back under the Edgar administration, the General Assembly, in its infinite wisdom, came up with this idea that we're not going to fund the pensions this year, and we'll slowly contribute it up. So by the time you get to the end of this ramp, we're gonna be putting more and more and more money into it. Well, that idea just didn't really work out. And it was in my opinion, it was kind of pie in the sky approach to public policy and funding. So in 2000, I believe it was 2005, there was a request by the General Assembly to divert $2 billion from, this is the most recent diversion, $2 billion into other categories, and the unions agreed to do that in 2005. So that was about $2 billion. Again, I don't know exactly where that money was rerouted to. So we get to today, and regardless of what has happened in the past, which is absolutely deplorable, the reality is that that the pension systems are unstable, and that they will be, if nothing is done, there will be no money in the pension system 25 to 30 years from now, which again is unfair. It's unfair, and it is unfair because you know, those receiving pensions have paid their fair share into the pension system, and the state just dropped the ball. They didn't do their share. But regardless of how we got here, we have to recognize the fact that if we didn't do something, that there would be no pension. And one of the things that we have to look at is that right now we're having more people who are retired pulling off the pension system than people that are paying into it. So you basically have more money coming out right now than is going into it, and the rate of growth from the funds cannot keep up with the amount of money that's coming out, which is another problem. In the first version of SB 1, it essentially was about 75% of the savings was made up from those individuals who were part of the pension system, and about 25% was made up from taxpayers. In the second version of SB 1 that passed, it's about a 50-50 split. So the changes that were made to those eligible for a pension and what is going to be in their pension, that qualifies for the 50% from those receiving the pension. The other 50%, the taxpayer-funded part of it, comes from the bonds that were floated a couple years ago. There were about $8 billion in bonds floated to fund the pension system. Those bonds are going to come up in about 2019. They'll start to expire in 2019. So the revenue that the General Assembly is putting in to pay down those bonds, once those bonds are retired, will simply be redirected into the pension system and accelerate the pay-in into the pension system. And so it turns into roughly about a 50-50 split. Again, your questions are completely valid. Your feelings are completely valid. You have a right to be upset and angry. From my perspective, is that we could no longer do nothing. And this has been, in the pension discussion has been going on for a number of years, and every day that it took to get something implemented, it was going to create a larger and larger unfunded liability, which meant harsher and harsher and harsher measures were going to have to be taken. Even during the debate in the House with the most recent version of SB 1 that passed, you had people very loudly advocating for the liquidation of the pension system and dumping everything into a 401k, which is really the opposite extreme of where we're at right now, and we had to find something in the middle, and that was not an easy thing to find that middle ground. There are some people that I talked to that are upset that say that the pension bill went way too far. There are other people I talked to who are upset saying that the pension bill did not go far enough. So it really was a situation where it was, again, an inherently unfair situation that at the end of the day, no one was going to be happy with the outcome. The other thing, too, to keep in mind is that because of the constitutional clause in the Illinois State Constitution, this is, and it's already started, it's going to be challenged before the Illinois Supreme Court. Now, because of the breakdown, the separation of powers amongst the different branches of government, the Supreme Court could not come to the legislature and say, this is what we believe is constitutional. So the only way for the Supreme Court to rule on what's constitutional is for the General Assembly to pass something, the governor to sign it, and then it gets before the Supreme Court. So really, we're just at this point in the next phase of an ongoing process. The Supreme Court is ultimately going to have to rule what is constitutional, what is not constitutional, and then it's going to have to go back to the General Assembly, so the General Assembly can then make whatever changes are necessary to the law for it to fall into the constructs of constitutionality.
So the bonds, am I allowed to follow up on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Just asking the
Yep.
big boss over there. That'll be my big boss. So the bonds were paid for previously, but the taxpayers aren't being asked to do anything in the future, just the people with the pension. I mean, they're not out dollars.
Well, technically they are, because those bonds that were floated, right now, everyone's tax dollars that are coming into the state are being used to pay those bonds. So we're paying back borrowed money right now, which was used to pay the pension. So taxpayers are paying down those bonds. Once those bonds are expired, the taxpayers will still be obligated to make those payments, but not to the bonds, to the pensions.
Oh.
So it's the same revenue stream, but just diverted into the pension system.
Thank you.
Sure.
Further questions? Melinda?
Yeah, I actually have one for the sheriff candidates. So over the last maybe 4 years, there have been some issues at the jail. Specifically, 2 people lost their lives. And one, the county, I know, has settled with, fairly large settlement with the Gruber family. And there will be other settlements to come with the private company that handles some things at the jail. I just wonder how you feel about those issues. Do you think that the sheriff's department is doing a really good job with the jail? Just any issues there that you see, and I'd really like to hear what the candidates have to say about that.
Go in the same order we
Thank you.
On those deaths, personal knowledge on the 2 of them. The one, the gentleman wasn't cooperative. They sent in the correctional response team. Beat this guy so bad that he ended up in a nursing home where he died. He never regained consciousness. And I've dealt with belligerent people all my career. And a lot of times it's alcohol or drug related, or that's just the way they are. I never saw the need for something like that. The other lady was a citizen of India who was summoned for jury duty, and she wasn't even qualified to be on a jury. They allowed her to starve herself to death in that jail. Now, what you don't know is my Catholic church belonged to Most Blessed Trinity, which is 3 parishes in Waukegan and North Chicago. We questioned why that happened. We paid for her funeral to bury her because she had nobody in this country. The response from the sheriff was to cut off all the ministry for our deacons and priests. They were not allowed to go into the jail and minister to the inmates for over 6 weeks. Okay? Sometimes that's all a person down there has left is God. Their families have abandoned them for whatever reason, whatever they've done, and they get no help down there. The only thing they have is the once a week chapel sessions with the deacons or the pastors from some of the Baptist churches in the area. And they cut it off for 6 weeks. Now that punished not only the inmates, it didn't punish the church, although our obligations weren't fulfilled, but it punished the inmates. And his excuse was, well, we have to do a background investigation on everybody, which has been done before. Some of the ministers that come in there are former drug addicts. They're they've got criminal histories, but they've turned their lives around. And there's nobody better to help people in jail than somebody who's been there and has picked themselves up by the bootstraps, okay? But my feeling on that is they should settle and settle quick. Because if these things go to trial, the public's gonna know just what kind of a nightmare these 2 inmates went through, particularly the one that was beaten into a coma and slipped out the back door and put in a nursing home. That's not who we are in this country. We're better than that. And we have to be better than that, and people need to be held accountable. And as far as I know, nobody has been held accountable.
Can I follow up just with one question on that, and then for both of you? I mean, my personal feeling is that there's a culture that's allowed, so that kind of behavior can exist. Do you believe that's something, and I realize I'm kind of leading you, but is that something that you're concerned about, that the current Sheriff Curran, that there's a culture that allows that kind of behavior?
I believe that there is, Now, I know that the job is not easy in there, by any means. The guys that are up on, what they call maximum security, they'll take any chance, they'll take a shot at you anytime they get a chance, so they have to, be on their guard at all times. I understand that. But when we went to direct supervision there, we were one of the first correctional facilities in the country to do that. And that was working better than the old jail where the inmates ran it. Okay. And yeah, is there a culture of that developing amongst most of the workers there? I don't think so. But the training is what's lacking. They've trained, the correction response team, they've trained them to subdue, they've trained them to fight, they've trained them to do whatever they have to do. Nobody's taught them verbal judo, as the class is called, where they can talk to the inmate, talk him down. If he's in his cell, he doesn't want to come out for whatever reason, I don't see the need to go to that next level, unless he's got a weapon of some type. And in the old jail, they did a search just before they closed it. They came out with a complete guard's uniform, including shoes. So, it's a tough position, but as I said, with direct supervision, these things aren't supposed to happen. But again, I think it's just the lack of training is what's happening there. And again, we can't have that.
Thank you, Andy.
Well, and, it's exactly what I was kind of gonna say before you added the second part, was that there's a culture that starts from the top down. I mean, from the sheriff and from his more senior people underneath him, that there's no responsibility being taken for what's going on in the jail, and the subsequent lawsuits, and obviously there's the tragic deaths are just that, they're tragic and they shouldn't happen in any way. And I know Jason feels that paying $1.95 million to a family not only is not going to bring back their loved one, but it's it's money that could be used to do great things. I mean, you could put more officers on the street, you could put that money, this is county money, so you could do you could do stuff, in the school system, you could do stuff in the jail system, you can do things, with transportation that, the following lawsuits are just gonna, every time we do one of these lawsuits, they're just gonna keep getting bigger. And, we need to stop this from the top. It's one of the main things that I think is gonna be an issue in this race as we get into November is, the restructuring of the office at the higher levels, to change the culture, and then use that as, protecting ourselves from spending all this taxpayer money that can be used for other things. So I would agree with Senator Plouche about that.
Okay. Jeannie.
My question is also for the sheriff. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars for wrongful convictions in the state of Illinois. And especially, I'm interested in your opinion on the effect of wrongful convictions on women, because women are predominantly the ones that are not being able to get past their wrongful convictions and staying longer in jails. And it's based on research and techniques that were based on men and not on the behaviors and reactions with women. And so I'm interested in what you think you need to do to stop the whole process of the wrongful convictions, especially for women.
That's what's the order.
I don't have a good answer for the effect of the wrongful convictions, but what I will say is that Jason is definitely very interested in getting the sheriff's office, the state's attorney's office, the coroner's office working together much better, and part of, I think, going back to what we were just talking about, there's this culture in the office. I think leads to some shoddy police work.
I want to say thank you to the candidates for coming. Thank you to all the audience members for coming. Thank you to Jean for filming this for us. And I know Melinda has a comment or two that she would like to make.
Just as vice chair of this burgeoning organization, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, and I'd like to especially thank our Lieutenant Governor. This is pretty rare for us that we get someone that is a statewide candidate up here in Lake County. And I think that speaks volumes about how much we've grown up here and, you know, the blue change that we see. But really, and I'm going to say this too, because I've seen this. I thought she's got to be one of the first people to speak because she'll leave. She's a statewide candidate. They always leave. So thank you. I just wanted to say for respecting the organization, for staying, and really everyone that's up here, really very impressive. I'm thrilled that we're going to have someone with such an environmental bent on the county. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to Hal. I wanted to say that when I ran in 2008 for county board and Terry Wilke, you may remember this, Avon Township Dem said, we want the candidates to come in, we'd like to talk to you. At that meeting, it was Terry Wilke and myself that were running for office. Pat Carey, I believe, was out of town, or she would have been there. And Travis Haley was in attendance, and Mark Feldstein, who was the chair. That's it. It was in 2008. So I just want to say, we have such an opportunity. We like to say it's a big tent. There are a lot of different opinions within the Democratic Party. We have more moderate people, we have very progressive people, and the sea of in between. And everybody's welcome in Avon Township. So anyway, thank you so much, and thank you to the great